For anyone that doesn't know me, let me just introduce myself. I am Maggie Sullivan, and I am the Learning and Development Manager in the HR organization. I've been here for probably about 19, 20 months or so certainly in B&L terms, I'm still very new to the organization. I have here with me also my colleague Maureen Cantor, who's just joined the organization in November, also responsible for learning and development. Maureen and I are responsible for the training and development curriculum and are also responsible for the performance management system that we have here, and that's what we're going to be talking today about today is the performance management system. So our goals for today are to share with you the philosophy and the framework that we have used to approach the redesign of the performance management system, and to talk to you about goal setting. So the focus for our conversation today, or our talk today, is really on the goal setting end of it, and to be able to also provide you with the tools that you need to learn to navigate the new ePerformance system. So that's why we'll actually be going into the PeopleSoft system to be able to just play around with that a little bit and show you how to use the tools that we have available to you. So let me just talk for a minute about what ePerformance is. ePerformance is a module that we purchased within the PeopleSoft system. It is a performance management tool that is configurable. And what that means, I think it's important to explain it because a lot of questions continue to come up on why we haven't done certain things that people would like to see in it. And it's because those customizations take a longer amount of time. They cost a lot of money. So we've done customizations where we can. We'll continue to do what we need to do in the future. But it is delivered as a fixed tool. What configurable means, though, is that it is a system that has much more flexibility than we've had in the past. It's easier for us to design new performance appraisal templates. It provides a lot of nice features and benefits. It puts a lot more accountability back on the manager or the supervisor, but gives you a lot more flexibility to be able to do what you need to do with the performance documents that you're managing for your employees. All of the customizations that we've put into place with this system do come from conversations and focus groups that we've had with employees, leaders, and managers within both the science and the support organizations. So some of the benefits to this system, as I mentioned earlier, it is configurable, and that does make it easier for us to be able to make certain changes as we move forward with it. I'm sure and I'm confident that we're going to be getting a continuous amount of feedback on updates and changes that we'd like to be able to see, and having a configurable system makes it easier for us to be able to do some of those. Another thing that we've done with it is that we've been able to streamline the process. As we go through our discussion today, you'll see that we have been able to create templates that all look very similar, all 4 of our performance appraisal templates. That's going to help us to drive towards a greater level of consistency and standardization within the organization, and to start to try to hold people to similar standards. The other feature that we have with ePerformance that's really very nice, I think, is the Performance Notes feature. Performance Notes is another thing we'll talk about today, and it is a tool that allows you as an employee to be able to track your own performance during the course of the year, to write notes to yourself about a goal accomplishment, for example, and to be able to maintain that in its own separate file. What you also have is the ability as a supervisor to begin to document and track the performance of your employee throughout the year. And if you really start to do that as somebody accomplishes a goal, or somebody has a significant achievement, or you have a performance discussion with somebody, use this system to track those discussions. I think when you get to the end of the year, completing the performance appraisal itself will become much simpler and much easier for you. The other thing that's a benefit for this system is there is an improved auditing function. So there is documentation as to who last updated a goal, you or your employee, the date that that goal was modified. There's documentation and auditing that happens as to whether an appraisal was closed out by human resources because it wasn't acknowledged by the end of the year, or if it was closed out by the employee. So the auditing function, if we need it, is much improved over what we have in our current PeopleSoft system. The summary screen that you get as a manager includes due dates. We do need to make a change on it right now. Right now it says goal setting is due April 30th. We need to tighten that back up a little bit. We'd like to have that done by the end of February. But you will, so one of the things that people have said is, Maggie, I can't find the email that you sent to me. I don't remember what the due dates for this particular thing was, when I was supposed to have the appraisals done, when I'm supposed to have my self-review done. Those kinds of things will be tracked in the system. And the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, is that everybody here will have more control over how they manage the documents for their employees. So you can change a document. You can move it forward or back in the process if you need to. So if your employee needs to have something reopened so that they can finish a self-review or make a change, you can do that. While we're still happy to help, it reduces your reliance on human resources and the need to call us every time that you want to have a document move forward or backward within the process. So let me tell you a little bit about how we got here. We had a project team that was put into place, and we worked together for a good 6 months. We finished a lot of the work that we had done in the September-October timeframe, but made a decision not to open up this system until we started fresh with goal setting. So we'd start at the start of the performance management system. That project team spent a lot of time analyzing the current state of the performance appraisal system that we had in place, as well as thinking about what we might want for a future state. We went out and we did focus groups with people, as I mentioned, on both the science and the support side of the organization. We talked to employees, we talked to managers, and we talked to some of our leaders. So we did take into account, as much as possible, a lot of the input and feedback that we got. And most of the customizations, if not all of them, are things that came from what our employees and what our supervisors were asking for. So some of the big changes, and I think this is some of what we started to talk about, that we do see in the system, is that all employees are, if you have a performance review being completed on you, you are required to have performance goals.
Unless you're in the bargaining unit, right?
Unless you're in the bargaining unit, yes. Yes, unless you're in the bargaining unit. And at this particular point in time, the decision to whether or not a postdoc has a performance review is handled at the departmental level. So those are the two groups that are excluded. Other than that, all employees are required to have performance goals. We are going to be evaluating employees on both what they accomplished, which we've always done in the past. What was it that you achieved? What were the results that came out at the end of the year? But we're also going to be looking at how the employee accomplished whatever it was that they accomplished. So we're going to be looking and asking employees across the board, across the entire laboratory, except for the bargaining unit and postdoc employees, to be evaluated against the laboratory values with a 3-point rating scale. We also have a feature in this system where managers can solicit input from others. A manager can send out a communication through the performance system that allows them to solicit specific input about their employee. Now, for participants on a CIP team, a competitiveness improvement project, the manager is required to solicit input from the CIP team leader or if somebody's in a deployed position. So, for example, our deployed HR managers, our deployed quality representatives, our deployed ES&H folks. The manager does need to solicit input from the organizations with which they're deployed. But other than that, it can be used at the discretion of the manager. The employee can ask you to solicit input from somebody, but it really is at your discretion. On the receiving end of those evaluations, you can accept or decline, unless, again, you are in the CIP team leader role or if you are working with somebody who is deployed to you. The other thing, as I mentioned a minute ago, we did spend a considerable amount of time working on the definitions for how we evaluate people's performance. It is best practice to stay with a 5-point scale, so we have stayed with a 5-point rating scale, and we did retain the same names because we felt that that was easier for people who were already used to that in the system. The definitions, though, do help us, which is the goal, to better differentiate between people's performance. And in order to be able to have, when you look at those definitions, which are published in the subject area right now, in order to be able to have distinguished performance for a given fiscal year, you need to be able to have performed, knocking it out of the ballpark, exceeded expectations against your performance goals, performance against your R2A2, as well as consistently throughout the year demonstrated the laboratory values. So as I mentioned earlier, what we're really trying to make sure that we move towards is looking at not only what somebody accomplished, but how they accomplished it. So if you achieve a great deal, but you do it in a way that's not collaborative or respectful of the other people around you, then that is not distinguished performance. If you're very collaborative and are a great person to work with, but you're not achieving at an exceptional level everything that you need to achieve, that is also not distinguished performance. The reality is that most people probably are in that EP range, which means that you're performing satisfactorily against your R2A2. You're achieving the majority of things that are listed within your goals, and you're, generally speaking, you're demonstrating the laboratory values. So we really are trying to look for that greater differentiation. I would suggest that, and we're not at all saying that we should have a bell curve or that we're looking to have any kind of normal curve in terms of looking at the range of people's performance, but I would suggest that it would be very difficult for any employee to year after year after year after year have distinguished performance. To be able to maintain that level would be very difficult. I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm just saying I don't think that would be the majority of people. So we hope to be able to better differentiate people's performance and reward the distinguished performance and really be able to see how performance varies across the individuals within the laboratory. The other thing that is probably going to feel new to some people is that all employees should have a mid-year review. That is an opportunity for an employee and a manager to sit down and have a discussion around progress against goals, performance against the R2A2, and the extent to which they are demonstrating the laboratory values. We're not asking you as managers to go in and complete another whole performance review. This is a discussion to have with your employees, a midpoint progress check to make sure everything's going along okay, and give your employees an opportunity for a mid-course correction. And hopefully, most of you are already doing this during the course of what you do anyway. So there's not a formal document that needs to be completed, but we are asking that you have at least a mid-year conversation with your employees in terms of their performance and provide them with any feedback. The question is, how is this system better?
Yeah. Why is this? There
were a number of system features for, and I'm sorry I keep moving back and forth. The light is shining right in my eyes. One of the things that did not work well in the system previously was with the goal appraisals. Every goal had to be weighted, and it's very difficult to really distinguish from a weighting perspective what was more of a priority and less of a priority. And the system automatically calculated a performance rating for somebody and didn't separate out the R2A2 from the goals. And your R2A2 really is not a goal. So one of the changes that we've made is that there are 3 things that you need to consider as a manager in evaluating somebody's performance. But we've put a lot more of the judgment back on you. Now, at some level, we could say, that's not an improvement, but from my perspective, I think that we have to really encourage our supervisors and our managers to do the right thing in differentiating their performance. So what we've done is put more of the judgment back on you and not have a system that automatically calculates a rating at the end of the year. But for you as the manager, I'm suggesting that you need to set. The other thing that we've formalized, which happens in a lot of departments, is that we would like to see at the department or at the ALD level, in order to increase the level of standardization, which is one of the things I think you were also referring to in your conversation, that there is a calibration discussion. And this is already happening in a lot of parts of our organization, but we will, as we get closer to that point in the year, send out some tools to help our HR managers who are facilitating these, but we want to formalize the fact that we do expect that to happen. For many departments, that's not a change. For some departments, that is a change. Well, I would expect that at the department level, you would get together and you would talk about, obviously not every employee within the department, but talk about what are the kinds of criteria used for certain ratings. You might have to do it at another level below the department level if the department is very big, such as in physics. I would imagine that you would probably also have to look at it at a group level. But talk about what the criteria were against which people are being rated and allow input to happen from other people within the department and make sure that everybody is aligned. And what we do see happening is that sometimes when people get together and have those conversations, ratings do move up or down to increase that level of standardization. So, for example, that happens right now throughout photon sciences. I do believe it's happening. Leo can confirm that in F&O organization. But we would like to see that get more formalized in order to be able to start to calibrate against one another. Okay? So we have 4 performance templates that exist. We have a general goal template. We have a scientific template, which can be used for group leaders or can be used for scientists. So we've added in the leadership component into that appraisal. Just as it does exist today, I think it can be used both ways. We have a supervisor manager. Group leaders can also use this appraisal depending on what you and your manager decide to do. And then a senior manager appraisal. In terms of the contents of the appraisal, all appraisals have a section on goals. All appraisals have a section on key accomplishments, which is where we also talk about the R2A2. All appraisals have a section where there's a rating against B&L values, a section where you can complete for improvement or development. Now, I would suggest that, I think everybody in the organization has opportunities where they can continue to develop and extend their skills for people to have that conversation. And then a section for the overall summary, which is where you provide the overall rating. The annual performance cycle has 3 phases. So again, we're asking that as a manager, there are 3 touch points that you have with your employee throughout the year. The first one is the goal setting process, which is where you establish criteria for the year coming up. That's what we're starting now. I would also suggest that this is a good opportunity for you to take a look at an employee's R2A2 and make sure that the R2A2 is accurate and up to date. The next point would be the mid-year performance review. And again, that's where we're asking you to have a conversation to talk to an employee about the extent to which they're making progress against their goals, their performance against their R2A2. How are you doing? Do we need to do a mid-course correction? And if in any situation that you don't think that they're behaving in a way that's consistent with the values, I would expect you to also have a conversation about that at this time. But this is a conversation for you to do a mid-course correction. And then lastly is the performance appraisal process, which we've just completed, where you evaluate somebody's performance at the end of the year. So in an ideal world, though, you're really having your conversation, the performance appraisal part of it should be a little bit more truncated since the salary review starts, but you have your performance discussions between November and early December, and then move into the goal-setting phase. However, if, as an organization, we believe that that goal-setting section should stay flexible until August, and the end of the fiscal year is September 30th, so I think that's pretty far along when we start to get ready to open up the performance appraisals, that is very possible for us to be able to do. From a PeopleSoft perspective, this was designed to shut down as soon as you establish your goals earlier in the year. And I completely agree with you, there should be flexibility. We had looked at flexibility through about the end of June, which is a little bit past mid-year. If organizationally we think it should be longer than that, we can do that all the way through August. The key accomplishments section is a good place for people to add something that wasn't in their goals. People should have 2 to 5 performance goals. And so there is opportunity for you to be evaluated on something that's a significant accomplishment that's outside of your goals that you established anyway. But I do agree with you that you don't know everything you're going to accomplish in the January-February timeframe. I completely line up on that. We're saying people should only have 2 to 5 performance goals. That's something that's determined early on in the year. So I'm going to answer this in 2 ways. One is that as a general rule, as we go through this, you'll see that our message is that people should have 2 to 5 performance goals. In 2 to 5 performance goals, that's something you decide somewhere in the first part of the year that is something that's important at a department level for somebody to achieve or at a group level for somebody to achieve. That's got flexibility to be changed. In our goal rating, we're not using the 5-point scale to rate goals. We're actually rating goals on a 3-point scale. We even have a withdrawn rating, which we haven't had in the past. That would say priorities completely shifted in this department, and we decided to just take this goal off the table. So there's flexibility from that perspective. There's going to be, for everybody, there will always be things that are just significant accomplishments that happened, but we didn't know about them earlier in the year, or they didn't get documented as a goal, but it still is a significant achievement for that individual. Well, that can get documented in the key accomplishments section, and because the rating is not completely determined by the goals, it's not going to influence, you can make that be a significant part of somebody's performance rating in terms of what they accomplished for the year. So you've got the discretion and the judgment to do that. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, if the feedback that we're getting from this is that we need to leave the goal section open until August, we can do that. what we can do is we can have supervisors mark that complete button when they think that they're ready to, and we won't shut the goal system down officially from an HR perspective until August, which gives you that summer to be able to go ahead and put a goal in. I mean, the flexibility exists to do that, and if that's what we need to, if that's what we're hearing from parts of the organization, then we have the flexibility to do that, and we will respond to that. So then you can go ahead and put some goals in the summer. We can do it both ways. No, and I'm sure there are goals that can be established up front that are for somebody who's a technical person that are outside of their R2A2 or build on or expand to something within the R2A2. As I said, there's that whole section on key accomplishments, and I would expect that for most people, there will be significant things that you achieve through the course of the year that weren't planned and that somebody still did an absolutely bang-up job. And maybe that's what even caused a goal to wind up being withdrawn. Let me walk through this a little bit where I've got some definitions of what goals might look like as we go through it, and let me make sure that I come back to that, please. So this is where our intent is to focus our conversation today. I'm just going to walk through the process for what the goal-setting process... I'm sorry, another question before I keep going?
What do you see the postdoc cycle?
The postdoc cycle? So the postdocs are not required right now to have a performance appraisal, so we haven't yet determined the cycle.
Well, they are rated by the...
That's determined at the department level. It's not determined at our level. And right now, what we can't do is run this system on a postdoc anniversary date. So we are in conversation, and we will solicit input. It's purely exploratory. What can we do from a systems perspective to accommodate postdocs? There's been no decisions, not even a project plan put together around that. Evaluation of postdocs is whether or not they have a formal performance review done in our system is not done across the laboratory. The system opens for goal planning, which it is right now. So if you go into your performance management system now, under employee self-service, you'll see that your appraisal in the new system is open. The first question we ask is whether the appraisal type is correct. So as a manager, you need to make sure that we've assigned the right appraisal type to your employee. If we haven't, you have the ability to go in and change that in the system. I'll show you how that happens. If it is, then you and your employee would work together to be able to develop performance goals. If the goal's okay, you agree to the goals, and it can be changed until the mid-year review is completed. This, I think, is something we're going to have to revisit, whether we leave this open till August or at a departmental level, department by department, there's a decision that's made to leave it open till August. But if the goal is not okay, then you and your employee can work together to make the appropriate kind of adjustments that need to happen. The goals should be collaborative, yes. So that would handle that, and the system will audit as to who was the last person to go in and modify the goal. So the employee will know, and you'll know if whoever went in and did the last round of changes. But it should be done collaboratively. So supervisors, clearly, and you're all supervisors and managers in this room, you shouldn't be changing your employees' goals without having a conversation with them. And at the mid-year review, you'd be in a collaborative discussion.
Is there a record? In other words, not all human beings are...
No, they're not. So the system doesn't... It audits when it was modified, but I'll have Marianne double check to see whether or not it actually, I think once it's deleted or once it's changed, what the old goal was does not get maintained. Now, if you're concerned about that from a supervisor or an employee perspective, you can transfer the document that you're working on into a PDF. It will show you what was the last date of the modification, and you can save it on your computer. So if you do have a concern about that, there is a way for you to take the responsibility to track that. I just want to go through what the mid-year review process looks like really briefly. When we get to that May-June timeframe, the supervisor conducts the mid-year review with the employee. They look at both performance and goals. If there's a need for opportunity, improvement, or training, you have a conversation with that person and help to get them back on the right course. If there's not, that would be a time where you would close the goals in the ePerformance system, except in those situations where for some reason we want to continue to keep them open. And as I mentioned, we'll go back and take a look at that. So how does this collaborative process work? Some of the things to think about when you're trying to establish goals, it's what's going on with the laboratory strategy. A lot of the people in this room have goals that are tied to the ALP or to the PEMP, but there should also be strategies that are just tied at the department level or within your particular group. You can also consider individual performance needs. So to your point earlier, a goal can be a lot of different things. There is no set rule, and I think that's probably why you feel like you're getting mixed messages. It should be a collaborative discussion that happens between the manager and the employee, and there should be mutual agreement as to what those goals are. At the end of the day, as a supervisor or the manager, you do have the final say, but in order to get the commitment from your employee to put their best into it and to encourage them to live up to their potential, you really do need to have that level of mutual agreement. I don't have to have a definition of a goal up here. Everybody in the room should know what it is. We set goals for ourselves all the time, whether it's at work or outside of work. I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to quit smoking. I want to lead a healthier lifestyle, everybody's New Year's resolutions. But a goal is the result of something that, or the outcome of something that you want to strive towards. But goals can be specific projects that somebody needs to complete. It can be a job function that needs to improve. It can be a stretch assignment for somebody. It can be a skill that needs to be developed depending on the employee. What a goal is not is just a reiteration of somebody's R2A2. But it can build on or expand something within somebody's R2A2. The reason that we do want everybody to set goals is it helps to provide focus for people. It helps to set direction. If at the department level you're stepping back to say, what are the primary things that we want to achieve, it allows you then to economize and prioritize the effort across all of your employees. It also, the employees have been that we've had in these rooms have been very receptive to the fact that we're going to have goals, and when we did our focus groups, people did want them. And maybe we haven't touched everybody in the laboratory, but 2 to 5 performance goals for each person is a reasonable expectation. And it can be motivating for people when they are able to achieve something that is outside of their normal scope of responsibility. And I'm sure everybody has heard the SMART acronym. We've all talked, I'm sure you've been in programs, we've talked about this before, but it still merits just having a quick discussion about it. Goals should be SMART. You don't create them to be smart, you create them to be something that's going to drive change, but the way to determine if you've got a good goal in place is to make sure that it's specific. That means that you and your employee have talked about it in enough detail that you feel confident. There's enough specificity, you both know what it is that you want to achieve. They should be measurable in that there's a quantifiable or qualitative metric that's tied to a goal so that you've come to some agreement as to what good looks like and you know what progress against that goal looks like. And it should be attainable. And when I talk about attainable, it means that it's within that person's capability to be able to achieve. So that means that for some employees, that goal might be a little bit higher than it is for somebody else because everybody's potential is somewhat different. But it also means that you considered whether or not the resources are available and whether you're able to provide sufficient support for it. It doesn't do us any good as a laboratory to put goals in people's performance appraisals where we're not going to have the resources to be able to deliver against those goals. And it should also be relevant, so it is relevant to their job unless intentionally you're trying to take them outside of their scope for some particular reason, and time-bound. Some of the mistakes that we see here in terms of, or we see all over the place, but some of the observations I've had in terms of what I see is that a common thing is that people have too many goals. When I look at people's performance appraisals, frequently I see people have 8 goals, 9 goals, 10 goals. It is, I think, impossible for somebody to be able to achieve that many goals plus perform effectively against their R2A2. So I keep coming back to the same thing. 2 to 5 performance goals is the right number. And 2 for somebody is perfectly fine if they're really achievable things for somebody to stretch to, and you still expect really strong, superior performance against an R2A2. That they're not specific enough, they're just general and vague, and I don't think that helps. And that they're just too big, that big, hairy, audacious goal that people put out there, and that they are not then achievable or attainable. The other mistake is that people don't write down what their goals are, but we are requiring that in the system. We all know when you make a specific goal public that you want to achieve, it increases that level of commitment. So some of the things to consider when you're thinking about goals, so lab strategy, department strategy, any kind of new initiative or program or process that exists within the organization. So one concern that has been raised, for example, is for administrative personnel, how are we going to establish a goal for them? There's a lot of new things that exist out there that require administrative support. The proposal prep and risk process would be an example of that. For Star, who works for me, this new ePerformance system is clearly going to be a goal for her to be able to learn that this year. We all need to look at improvements in our safety record, or not all of us, but a lot of us do, and it is certainly a focus for the laboratory. But you can also ask the question, is there a way for us to get something done cheaper or faster or more efficient than we have in the past, naturally, without taking away from the safety elements of things? And lastly, is there an individual performance goal that somebody needs to meet? Is there an opportunity for somebody to learn a new skill set to be able to contribute in a different way to the department? I've put some examples of goals up here. They're just things for you to think of, for people to be able to think about. We did get some feedback that people would like to see more examples, so we are going to be working on providing more examples of goals. We'll let you know when that is available, and it will be available either in the subject area in SBMS or on the HR staff development website, but we will let you know when that happens. So just an example for an administrative person, if somebody needs to improve the ability to provide graphic support within the department, they would need to develop those skills necessary. If you notice, the focus of the goal is on the development of a skill. It's not on the fact that they need to attend a training program. Attending a training program is a check the box for a goal, and we are encouraging you to focus more on what the outcome is that you want something to be, or the impact of it, rather than just to go and check the box that they attended the training program. The metric then becomes the ability to actually deliver or create higher quality presentations than they have in the past. Similarly, an example with improving the efficiency of monthly reporting someplace, the focus isn't on attending the Excel training program, it's on actually learning to use the macros or the formulas to be able to decrease the level of time it takes to prepare those reports. Other examples, I mentioned the prep and risk process. To be able to take the training, to be able to demonstrate they're able to navigate it and provide the appropriate level of support from an administrative perspective. Delivering a seminar for somebody in an area within their area of expertise. They can focus on improving their presentation skills, for example. They probably need to think about having papers prepared for more than one seminar, or sending their proposal in for more than one seminar in order to be able to get accepted. Customer service would be another example, improving customer service. So these are just examples. The feedback that we've gotten this morning was that, particularly from the scientific community, they'd like to see examples of what scientific goals look like. So we will be working to put those together, and if there are anybody here who would like to volunteer and be part of that and provide us with some help and assistance, we would be greatly appreciative of that. We did have one person from CAD who offered to help. So some tips. We just would recommend that you make sure that employees have a good understanding of what your expectations are, particularly for anyone that hasn't set goals in the past, before asking them to start that goal-setting process. And that you do empower your employees by giving them as much control and input into the process as possible. You'll see that you are both able to edit goals at the same time as we go into the system in a minute. Although you do have the final say in what the goals do look like. But as somebody mentioned earlier, that is a collaborative process. Be sensitive to time frame and resource issues. Encourage employees to stretch their skills, whether it's additional training or getting involved in some kind of an opportunity that they haven't gotten involved in the past. Now, one of the things that I think that we don't always do enough around here is celebrating successes. So I would love to be able to see that there is some recognition for somebody when they do achieve a particular goal, at least within the department, that there is an opportunity to celebrate some kind of success. And then we'll talk about the performance notes feature, but a common thing that we hear is that performance appraisals take a long time to complete, and I know they do. And to do a good job on them, they do take a long time. Using the performance notes feature during the course of the year to document somebody's performance against a goal, to document accomplishments that they have, or to document performance needs as they come up will help to make that process easier at the end of the year. So we'll just move into the PeopleSoft system. So I'm going to start first with the manager self-service. For anyone, go in here to performance management, but I want to point this line out here. For anyone here who has not yet, or whose employees have not yet acknowledged their appraisal, who have not finished their appraisal, we are scheduled to shut this system down on Friday the 18th. But this is where you can find old appraisals right now. When we shut this old system down, those appraisals will move over to the new system, but they will all be closed by HR at the end of this week. Performance management is where you would go right now to find the new stuff. If you click on this, you'll get a screen that looks like this. I'm going to tell you that I don't have the screen displayed here, but the first time that you go into the new system, it will ask you to take a look at the designees that you have. If you have any designees for your employees, it will ask you to look at your list of designees and to click either keep all or delete all. It's the only time you're going to see that screen. Once you keep all or delete all, it won't keep coming up. But I have already checked my designees, and I don't have that screen available to me right now. So you'll have three different things that come up under management self-service. You'll have this section called performance documents, a manager summary, and a place for your performance notes. I'm going to start with the performance documents. So if you have an employee that you need to create a new document for, so for example, somebody who's new to your organization and they need to have a performance appraisal, you would go here to create a document, click on that. There it goes. So it gives you instructions. You hit continue. I'm going to just show you an example of what you would do. So I just hit this for one of my employees. Check to make sure your performance year is correct. You would hit that you want to create a performance evaluation, and then you would choose the kind of template that it is that you want to create. And then you would hit create documents. So I can select a template, but it's not going to work for this person because they have an appraisal, but oops, it wouldn't even let me do that if I wanted to. This document already exists. But that's all you would need to do, and it would create the document. If you need to change a document for someone, you have to cancel their current document, delete their current document, and then you can go in and you can create. So it's cancel, delete, and create. This is where you will have
What is senior management?
Excuse me?
What is senior management?
Senior management are our level 1 managers. So they have a separate appraisal where they're evaluated. They're required to set goals within the 6 strategic focus areas that we have for the organization. So they have required areas that they have to have goals in, and that's why they have a separate appraisal template. The only thing that's different for their appraisal template is they are required to have goals within those particular areas. Other than that, they also have everything else that everybody else's appraisal here would have. Key accomplishments, the values, the improvement development, and the overall summary. You go in here to administrative tasks, and this is where you see transfer a document, delete a document, reopen a document, or cancel a document. So if, for example, you need to change the status to a performance appraisal before it's been acknowledged by the employee, you can do it yourself here. You don't have to come to Star or myself or your HR manager to be able to do that. So let me go to the manager summary screen. If you click here, this is where you get a summary of all your employees as you have in the past. So here are my direct reports. Just like in the past, you can also click on all employees and get a list of all your employees. And this is where it tells you where the appraisal status is. So you can see where, with Terry Magiri, for example, we haven't started goal planning yet. For both Star and for Maureen, goal planning is in progress. So I'm going to click on this general employee appraisal for Maureen. Well, before I leave here while I'm waiting, this is the other thing you can do. You can, right here, if you need to assign a designee for somebody, you can. So if you're going to be out, for example, and you need to assign a designee, but you don't want to transfer the whole document, this would, just like in our current system now, give somebody else access to that document. I want to point out the fact that in this performance system, the goal-setting phase is called Establish Evaluation Criteria. So that would be there. When you, I'm going to go back and just show you this here. This is what it looks like before you've actually started to establish goals. You would click on Start, and you could add supervisor or manager goals. Type in the title. Type in a description of the goal and the milestones. See how fast I am at goal setting. Type in appropriate metrics. Hit Update. And then you have it here. I'm going to point out to you, here's where, and you'll see where Maureen and I have gone back and forth already. You'll see the audit function there in more detail. But right here you can see that this now says that it was created by me on the date and the time at which I created it. I'm going to point out to you that this is a shared document. The goal-setting page is a shared document between the employee. And that is a way for you to collaborate and go back and forth. That you can both edit the document together. Your performance notes are private to you. When you do your performance appraisal on the individual, then that is also private to you until you release it to the employee, just like we have now. But the goal-setting piece is a shared document. Here's if you want to edit it. You click on the pencil, make any changes that you want to make, hit Update. And if you want to delete the goal, delete, yes. And then I'm back here. And then you can, add additional goals. This is the Save button. So just like in our current system now, if you step away from this, it will time out. Make sure that you save everything. And before you sign out of the system, make sure that you've saved. This button here, Complete, this is the button that you push. Your employee does not have access to that button. Only you do. But this is the button that you push when you want to mark your goals as complete, and you're going to lock them down so that they're no longer editable. And that's what we have been suggesting that you would do at the mid-year review. Remember, I said you could print it and it would save as a PDF, just like now. This is the printer icon. And if you want to communicate to your employees and let them know that you have done some changes to the goal, this is a way to notify them. So you can type some text in the message and go ahead and send it. Now, Terry's going to get a nonsense email from me with just... Let me just scroll through and tell you what the rest of this looks like. There's a section here on key accomplishments. This is where you would document performance against R2A2, as well as any significant accomplishments that somebody has during the year that are outside of their goals. This is where, when this opens up, you would be able to put in a rating against the laboratory values. The managing people piece is only in there for the supervisor's appraisal, not for the general employee appraisal. The improvement and development section, and then this is the section that would get sent out if you wanted to solicit input, as I mentioned earlier, for somebody outside of the chain of command. So for people on the CIP team, for deployed employees, somebody who's been on a particular project, somebody who's collaborating across functional lines. Many managers are doing this today, but they're doing it via email. This lets you do it through the system. And here's where you can see the audit history. No, that's a good question, Ed. It's set up to ask for the relationship that you have in working with this person, what the person's strengths and weaknesses are, what kind of contributions they made to the department, and then there's a section in there for anybody who is officially deployed to another part of the organization, which is the basic things that are in all of the feedback sheets when we have a deployed employee. Were they able to meet the goals? And I apologize off the top of my head, I don't remember what that is, and I can't see it because the system isn't open. But there is a particular section in there for anybody who's deployed if you're filling it out on a deployed employee. Mm-hmm. 1 to 3. It exceeds the expectations, meets the expectations, or is below expectations. If somebody's below expectations, then you are required, like with the performance factor, to actually type in some text in as to why that is the case. Is that the same criteria for all the other categories too? In terms of ratings, there's no rating required in the key accomplishments category or in the improvement development or in the overall summary. The ratings for goals are also a 3-point scale. Exceeded expectations, met expectations, below expectations, and then there is a rating for withdrawn if there's a goal that needed to be officially withdrawn because priorities or resources changed or somebody went out on FMLA, whatever that might be, that the goal is just taken off the table. You know what, I, to be honest with you, to somebody's point about going through this, I'm happy to have the discussion with you, but I shared with you earlier that best practice is to have a 5-point spread, 5 to 7-point spread in terms of providing an overall summary rating for people in order to be able to better differentiate people's performance. So from a philosophical perspective, we weren't looking to be able to narrow the performance spread that we had for people. And we did for goals, only for goals, not for the overall summary, and we're not monitoring people's overall goals, and for the values. But the system does not calculate what the overall rating was, and that is intentional. It's not that we didn't talk about it, it is quite intentional. And that we want to be able to have it be that the manager or the supervisor is accountable to really consider whether somebody is exceeding against their goals, performing against their R2A2, and demonstrating the laboratory values. I'm going to just go in and show you in the scientific staff appraisal. These are 3 areas that are recommended as possible categories as a suggestion. That is completely editable, but this was a recommendation that came forth to say, you know, for a scientist, you can consider goals in the areas of conduct of research, professional development, research project development, and planning. However, if that's not appropriate for you, this is editable and you can take those titles out and change them. But it is the only appraisal that has recommended categories. But as I said, that is at the discretion of the individual and their manager to determine if those are appropriate or not. And I'm just going to show you the performance notes section. Here's how you can search for performance notes. So here, for example, I have, there we go. I have put in some performance notes on one of my employees. And you just type into the subject area what your subject is. You type in the notes that you want to maintain. This is a spell check icon. It's been next to a number of different things that we've looked at. It also provides you up here with instructions on how to use it. I'm going to save it. You can delete performance notes. We'll give you a message. Do you want to delete it? You can also select a particular note that you want to transfer. And as I mentioned earlier, this lets you transfer a note for some reason. Let's say you wanted to share something with your supervisor that you had written. You wanted to share something with the employee. Maybe run something by a peer that you were thinking of putting in, cutting and pasting into a performance review, see if they thought it was good or not. You can do that here. What I want to be clear about, though, is that when you do transfer a performance note, you no longer have access to it. It shows up in that other person's performance notes. So if you want it back, you have to ask them to transfer it to you again. So Joe?
Performance notes, unless you give access to the employee, they can't.
The only way the employee would be able to see it is if you transferred it. Your performance notes are completely private to you. Your supervisor doesn't see them. They are a way for you to track your own performance and other people's performance throughout the year and write whatever it is that you feel you need to write in there. The one thing I will say that, from my own experience in playing around with this, that I've learned is that your performance notes will show up just in a line, like this does here. It doesn't sort them out as to whether or not, unless you're searching by employee. Let me go back out here. I want to go back to this manager summary screen. I don't know if I can get there. When you just go into performance notes from here, oh, it's doing this again. I'm just going to say what I wanted to say because I can't find how to get to the screen. Unless you search by employee, they will organize them if you go in from a particular employee and identify the note and tie it to an employee. But if you don't do that, they're not going to be organized in a way that's useful, I think, unless you're really careful about what that subject line is. You're going to have just a list of a whole bunch of different notes. So make sure the subject line is something that will make it easy for you to remember when you go back in. Okay? Now I'm just going to, the same thing applies for the way we've been going through this for employee self-service. But I'm just going to show you again. This is where you would access your own performance appraisal. This is where you would access for this year. And it works exactly the same as it does when you're going to do it for your employee. Except there is no complete button because this is now my appraisal. It would be Bob Lincoln that has the ability to lock those goals down. But it looks exactly the same. Here's where you would go if you want to nominate participants. You can nominate people now, but until we open the appraisal system, it's not going to go anywhere. But when we open the appraisal system, you would hit submit at that point, and that participant feedback document would be sent out. But you can just go in here and add a participant, put the participant's name in, do a search, just like you do with all of our other PeopleSoft. And it would send an email to that individual to let them know that they have been nominated and that you would like them to provide feedback. They have the ability to accept or decline the nomination unless they are a CIP team leader or, as I mentioned earlier, they're deployed. And then we have no way to really monitor that somebody does that, but we're not saying that you can accept or decline. We are saying that you need to fill out that feedback form. So what we have that's available to you for resources from a navigation perspective, by this Friday on the staff development, HR staff development website, there will be a navigation guide for employees and a navigation guide for managers. ITD has done a great job of step-by-step walking through all of the buttons you need to push to go through the process. This training session was taped, as well as one for employees this morning. The new subject area is up in SBMS. That doesn't address navigation, but it does address things from a process perspective. Your HR manager is a good resource for you. And then in terms of learning and development, my office, Maureen's office, and STAR are always willing to provide you with any kind of assistance or help that you may need.